A guy walks into a bar with a pet alligator by his side. He puts the alligator up on the bar. He turns to the astonished patrons. "I'll make you a deal. I'll open this alligator's mouth and place my genitals inside. Then the gator will close his mouth for 1 minute. He'll then open his mouth, and I'll remove my unit unscathed. In return for witnessing this spectacle, each of you will buy me a drink." The crowd murmured their approval. The man stood up on the bar, dropped his trousers, and placed his privates in the alligator's open mouth. The gator closed his mouth as the crowd gasped. After a minute, the man grabbed a beer bottle and rapped the alligator hard on the top of its head. The gator opened his mouth, and the man removed his genitals unscathed as promised. The crowd cheered, and the first of his free drinks were delivered. The man stood up again and made another offer. "I'll pay anyone $100 who's willing to give it a try." A hush fell over the crowd. After a while, a hand went up in the back of the bar. A woman timidly spoke up. "I'll try, but you have to promise not to hit me on the head with the beer bottle." 3 men from Germany, the US, and Japan were golfing together. Everything is normal until the third hole, when the German suddenly stops and stands still with his eyes closed. After a few moments, he says, "I'm sorry about that. It was an important email. We Germans have mastered bioimplant technology, and they display on the inside of my eyelids." The others nod and continue play. On the next hole, the American excuses himself and steps aside. He puts his thumb in his ear and his pinky next to his mouth and mutters for a few moments. "My apologies, I had to take that call. American technology is so advanced. I have a cell phone implanted in my hand. There's a microphone in my pinky, a speaker in my thumb, and I can make calls by wiggling my fingers." Play resumes. A few holes later, the Japanese man sprints into a clump of bushes beside the green. The others wait for a moment and then decide to investigate. They find their companion squatting with his pants down around his ankles. He looks up in embarrassment. "Excuse me, please," he says. "I'm receiving a fax." The boy takes his girlfriend back to her home after being out together, and when they reach the front door, he leans with one hand on the wall and says to her, "Sweetie, why don't you give me a blowjob?"
What? You're crazy?
"Don't worry, it will be quick. No problem."
No, someone may see, a relative, a neighbor.
At this time of the night, no one will show up.
I've already said no and no.
"Honey, it's just a small blowjob. I know you like it too."
No, I've said no.
"Baby, don't be like that." At this moment, the younger sister shows up at the door in nightgown, with hair a mess, rubbing her eyes and says,
Dad says either you blow him, I blow him, or he'll come down and blow the guy himself. But for God's sake, tell your boyfriend to take his hand off the intercom.
A handsome young lad who went into the hospital for some minor surgery, and the day after the procedure, a friend stopped by to see how the guy was doing. His friend was amazed at the number of nurses who entered the room in short intervals with refreshments, offers to fluff his pillows, make the bed, give back rubs. "Why all the attention?" the friend asked. "You look fine to me." "I know," grinned the patient, "but the nurses kind of formed a little fan club when they all heard that my circumcision required 27 stitches." An American traveling to Japan for business found himself with 2 extra days after business concluded earlier than expected. Being single and away from home for so long, he sought after female company, which he found at a geisha house. After selecting his partner, they proceeded to the room and undressed. As soon as the love session began, his female partner started softly whispering, "Yakamoda, Yakamoda." Not knowing any of the language, he believed this was good and that she was enjoying the session as much as he was. He proceeded to move faster now, and the woman said, with a firmer tone, "Yakamoda, Yakamoda." He was beside himself now, spurred by the enthusiasm of his female partner, and proceeded to imitate a rabbit he had seen on the Discovery Channel. She now screamed deep from her lungs, "Yakamoda! Yakamoda!" As he finished, he found that she had fainted, so he collected his things and left. The next day, he found himself playing golf with one of his Japanese clients. It was a par 3, approximately 173 yards, when his Japanese playing partner struck the ball, which took flight, landed on the green, and then rolled gently into the hole. Struck with excitement and at a loss for words, the American stated, "Yakamoda, sir." The Japanese gentleman looked at him strangely and stated, "What do you mean, wrong hole?" A guy has been asking the prettiest girl in town for a date, and finally, she agrees to go out with him. He takes her to a nice restaurant and buys her a fancy dinner with expensive wine. On the way home, he pulls over to the side of the road in a secluded spot. They start necking, and he's getting pretty excited. He starts to reach under her skirt, and she stops him, saying she's a virgin and wants to stay that way. "Well, okay," he says. "How about a blowjob?" "Yuck!" she screams. "I'm not putting that thing in my mouth." He says, "Well then, how about a hand job?" "I've never done that," she says. "What do I have to do?" "Well," he answers, "remember when you were a kid and you used to shake up a Coke bottle and spray your brother with it?" She nods. "Well, it's just like that." So he pulls it out, and she grabs hold of it and starts shaking it. A few seconds later, his head flops back on the headrest, his eyes close, snot starts to run out of his nose, wax blows out of his ear, and he screams out in pain. "What's wrong?" she cries out. "Take your thumb off the end." There was a little boy who had just learned to count on his fingers. One day, his uncle came to visit, and the boy was anxious to show off his newly acquired skill. He told the uncle to ask him an addition question, so the uncle asked, "What is 3 plus 4? The little boy counted it out on his fingers and said, 7. The uncle said, "Listen, kid, you can't count it out on your hands because someday when you're in school, a teacher will get mad at you for it. Now put your hands in your pockets." So the little boy put his hands in his pockets, and his uncle asked, "What is 5 plus 5? The uncle saw movement in the boy's pockets. Then the boy said, 11. 3 men met on a nude beach. 2 of the 3 men were happy, but the third was sad. The 3 men broke into a conversation. Eventually, they started talking about their jobs and why they were at the beach. "I'm a construction worker," said the first man. "All day long I toil in the hot, hot sun and do so wearing very heavy clothes. It's quite exhausting. But here I can relax and do so without any clothing at all." "I'm an accountant," said the second man. "I just like how everyone here is dressed exactly the same." The first 2 men turned to the third sad man. "What about you?" they asked. "Why are you here?" "My psychologist sent me here," said the third man. "I'm a pickpocket." My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.